everyone, this is Selena Kraus and welcome to another card video. For today's video, I'm featuring Scrappy tails, stamps, and dies. And I'm using a stamp set from the latest release from March called Mama Birds, and also a die set that was released back in January called Assorted Leaves. So I'm using just one die, the little branch with leaves, and I will die cut it 4 times out of white cardstock. So by magic of YouTube, I have all 4 pieces already die cut. And what we'll do next, we will use some liquid glue to layer those up to get thicker embellishment. And also this will help with reinforcing that stem. Because it's pretty thin and flimsy, this will give it a little bit more dimension and a little bit more thickness and stability. So I'm using liquid glue. You can use glue of any glue of your choice, but I find that with using liquid glue gives me a little bit more wiggle room or time to wiggle and line up those layers together. So next we're adding the 3rd layer on top, and we'll do it one more time for the 4th die cut. So I'm adding more glue here. Also adding along the stem so it's nice and stable. So now we're gonna let this dry. We have like 3 layers of glue, and I put acrylic block on top to let it dry flat. Next, I'm cutting squares that measure 1.5 by 1.5 inches. I'm using 4 different colors of cardstock. So once you cut one of the squares, you're gonna go diagonally and cut into 2 equal pieces, 2 equal triangles. So I'm cutting that down. Next, we're gonna cut one more time, or actually 2 more times. We're gonna cut each triangle one more time. So I'm finding the center of that longer side, and that I will cut along. I'll mark it where it is, and then I'll connect or cut through that center and the opposite corner. So that way we'll have another 2 triangles that have 19 degrees angle there. And then we're gonna piece those up again into squares. But we're gonna create a fun geometric background as a backdrop for our panel. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm lining up my cutting edge with that dot like mark we made where it's the half point of that side and the corner. So by magic of YouTube, I did all 4 squares, cut them into triangles. Next, I'm cutting a little bit squares a little bit smaller than 1.5 by 1.5. I'll use those as a base to piece the squares back together. So I'm using a little bit smaller because I don't want any white cardstock to be seen on the edges. So I'm just arranging them to see which pattern I want to create. So I decided to go on opposite sides to have the blue and green, and then the other 2 sides the yellow and the pink. I made a mistake on a 3rd one, and I'll make an additional one at once I start assembling them. So you will notice I noticed this that when I start putting them to see how the card would look, I realized that one had a wrong pattern. I had put blue and green next to each other. So there is the second one. I'm repeating the same process for each one of them. So here is where I'm making the mistake. I will add the blue, and then I should have taken it as a sign because I didn't line that properly, so I just decided to pull it out gently and re-adhere it. I should have realized that that was the wrong color next to the green. But it's not a big deal because we can easily fix it by cutting more triangles and adhering them into the original pattern. So, okay, we have the 4 here. Now I'm positioning them onto my panel. So now I'm making that extra square that has the right pattern of the triangles. Okay, and there we go with the green. So now they're all the same, and I'll save that for later for another project. Okay, so now I'm creating the pattern. I'm trying to decide which pattern I should go with. And also the sentiment, I decided to use thanks for all you do. And here I'm cutting a piece of white cardstock down to 4 by 5¼ inches. This is where I'm gonna adhere the squares and build up my panel. So next I'm using a sticky mat. I'm aligning those up, and then using repositionable tape, I'll pick up the squares. That way I know they're lined up, and it's easier to position them or adhere them on our panel. I think that looks good. I'll add liquid glue on the back. And then using that tape as a holder for that whole square, it's very easy and helps with the positioning of correct positioning of that whole pattern. While that's drying, I'm using a sparkle pen to add some shimmer to our die cut. I'll remove the repositionable tape and toss it away. It's okay, we have that now. I think that looks good. Now I decided to trim the last two sets of leaves from the branch. Before I adhere the die cut onto my card, I will stamp the sentiment. I decided to use black ink for the sentiment. So now we're gonna adhere that die cut. Just adding again liquid glue on the back. To finish off the panel and the card, I'm adding some pearls. White pearls to add a little bit more detail and a little bit more interest to our panel. And a little bit more sparkle. Okay, next we can create our card base. I'm using 4¼ by 5½ by 11 piece of white cardstock. I scored it at 5½ to create a top folding note card. Next I'm adding some fun foam or craft foam to add more dimension and adhering it to my card base. So here's a little close-up of the card we made. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit on that subscribe button. Also, please visit my blog for more ideas and more inspiration. Thanks for watching. Bye!